everyone. I'm Daniel Corey, coming at you from DangerKatt Central, and I'd like to welcome you all to Makers, Episode 2. Makers is is my show where I speak with artists who shape and make culture. And today I'm here with DJ and producer Andy Hill to talk about his synth-based alter ego, Subtheory. According to Andy's website bio, Subtheory sound speaks of his experience splitting time between UK and Los Angeles. The music draws from a darker, grittier version of a neo-retro dystopia. Blade Runner meets cyberpunk detective. Andy started making music from his parents' mono records with early MPC samplers before moving into the digital age with digital audio workstations. And his music's been featured on BBC Primetime, working title films, TV sports, the legendary Match of the Day. And he recently collaborated with fellow maker Kalindo, whom I interviewed in my inaugural broadcast to remix Kalindo's song Summertime. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Andy Hill, aka the Subtheory, to Makers. How are you, Andy? Where are you and what's it like?
Hi, Daniel. Really great to be here. I'm in London. I'm in Oxford. Sorry, we had a conversation before.
Yeah, right before this, I was asking, where are you, in London? He's like, no, I'm in Oxford. So that was my fault. I got him confused.
It's just, I'm saying everywhere's an hour from everywhere here. So it's, yeah, I'm here in Oxford, in the UK. Mm-hmm. Like I say, normally kind of back and forward, but 2020 has been the year that traveling stopped.
Yeah,
lots of things stopped. Traveling being one of them.
Yeah.
So I'm currently here for longer than I'm normally at.
Yeah. No. What are the conditions like right now? Like in Oxford where you are, I mean, are transmission rates and all that, is everybody doing okay over there?
I don't know how much how much news you get. I know sort of being in the US, it tends to be very much it's US sort of focused, but there is whole swathes of the country that's completely under lockdown still. So the north of England, so Liverpool, Manchester, that kind of area, is all under lockdown. The cases are, it's definitely the second wave. It's definitely we've done this thing where we've been trailing behind the rest of Europe a little bit. Virus-wise and probably politically as well, but we're on the upward curve. It's kind of done that. We're on that bit here as we kind of come into winter flu season, and here winter flu season is cold here.
yeah. Everybody get your flu shots. I just got mine a few weeks ago, so and it's and you know what LA's like. So it's it'll get kind of nice and cool in the 70s, but not too cold. But we still, I mean, we're on a working on a second wave here in the US as well.
You just had like a mini heat wave, didn't you? I think back of was
it was like September. It was hitting. I mean, we hit like 110 one day here. Yeah, I think like the hottest. I mean, I'm from Florida, so I'm used to heat. Like I lived 27 years in Florida before moving here to LA. I've been here a long time, but the hottest heat I've ever felt is here, man. It was like a couple of years ago. I was out walking. I was walking down my neighborhood tea shop, and it was 100. I looked at my phone. It was 113 degrees, and I'm like, how is this happening? But it's today is kind of nice and cool. I don't know if we're turning a corner or what, but then, we'll have a nice week and then boom, it's back up to 100 again. So who knows?
I'd never experienced heat. So when I was like 18, me and a friend hired a car, drove through New Mexico, Nevada, Arizona, well, other way around, and to Death Valley. And we've been sat in this air-conditioned car, and obviously we young and foolish, like, Death Valley is nothing. Got out of the car and it's like being slapped. It was that hot. I'm like, I can't move. It's so hot. I'd never experienced it like that. It was just unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, visit Florida. You'll know the jungle
being on another planet.
Yeah. I know. But man. Well, we just gotta lock down and wear our masks and stay safe during this time. So it's part of why I started doing this, is just to help give some people some entertainment, some inspiration while they're at home. So hopefully.
I watched the first episode with Kalindo. It was really good.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Oh, he's such a terrific guy. And yeah, I want to talk about your work with him a little later on. But I was very happy to be able to talk to him, and very happy to be talking with you, because I read up a lot on you, and I've been listening to your music, and I'm a fan. So
that's really cool. That's really cool. Thank you.
Sure thing, man. Well, I want to talk to you a little bit about what you're doing. Now, we're going to talk about the new album Impact soon, but first I want to jump in and ask the first question that I ask of all the guests on the show. What sort of art do you make, and what do you think is your role in shaping culture at large?
That's a big question. So I guess it's interesting. So I've been making music my whole life, and I always say it's because I'm a bit of a I always wanted to be an artist, and as in drawing, but I can't. And I'm not just saying that in a kind of fake humble way. I just really can't. I can't do it. So it's always like I wanted to tell a story, but I wasn't the greatest writer in the world. So I wanted to find something, and music was the thing that, I mean, from such a young age. I think I mentioned in the bio, it's sort of listening to the sounds that were in my parents' record collection. These sort of great mono records that you can play with a balance, and you've just got drums and vocals in one side. Other side you've got guitars and vocals or whatever. And I remember one, and probably lose all credibility for saying this, but the Simon and Garfunkel, one of the records, I realised that you do turn it that way, it's like an early sort of trip hop record, because there's just drums and a vocal. And I was like, yeah. Oh. And then that's when I started thinking about there's a whole process around recording. Until that point, I had the vision as a young kid that to record a song, you just got everybody around a mic, sang it and played it, and that was it. That was just how you did a record. And then that's when I sort of started thinking, oh no, there's more to it than this. So you come and you lay these separate parts, and you sort of build up all these kind of layers of stuff to create something else. And that's really what captured my imagination. Was it was kind of nerdy and technical, so it appealed to that side of me, but it's also sort of the art that paints pictures, writes the words that I can't do. So that's really where I position myself in that sort of art, is that music for me creates memories. It links to memories, so it's synonymous with things that we remember. So whether it's good or bad, there's moments in your life that you hear a song and you go, that reminds me of this particular time, or this particular thing, or this emotion, or
it's like a sense memory.
Right.
Triggers, yeah.
And that's for me the sort of the motivation behind making the music was, I want to do that to other people. I want to have that, give somebody else that feeling that I've got when I've gone, oh, this bit, it's perfect for this particular moment. Because sometimes it's unconscious, and sometimes you're sort of very conscious of the fact that you hear a piece of music and there's a certain thing happening in your life, and you're like, it's a bit like we're all actors in our own sort of films, and this is the soundtrack. And that's kind of really what I wanted to do. I wanted to create a soundtrack for people's memories, and even if just one person sort of listens to it and it sparks something in them, and it sparks that connection and memory, that's success for me. That is
very cool. And I'm actually a very big Paul Simon and Simon Garfunkel fan here.
Oh, okay.
You're not losing any credibility with me.
Okay. You never know, because some people I know go, oh, fuck.
Yeah, no. That's
or you get the other people that go, yeah, but they sold out, they went electric, a bit like Dylan goes electric.
Oh.
So
people over 70 probably might say that. I don't know. I wasn't alive then to be there for the selling out and going electric phase of Simon and Garfunkel.
I wasn't either, so I'm just.
I know. I know. That's so funny. Oh my gosh. But it was an interesting story about them, because in their first album, Wednesday Morning, 3 a.m., I think the Sound of Silence is on there, but it's just acoustic. Yeah. And when they released the single for The Graduate, I think what I heard was that the producers went and put in the electric guitars and all that without telling them.
And they had no idea. And they're like, what is this?
Yeah, yeah. But it's interesting because it goes again to what you were saying about the discovery of music being built on parts, you know, and
Right.
back then it was all analog and tape and stuff, but they still had methods.
There was something. There's something even more sort of technically incredible about it. I can't remember what it is exactly, but it's something they had to speed certain parts because it's analog and they had it on tape. They had to speed certain portions of it up. I'm fascinated by it. I've got loads of stories like that. You know the song. Do you know the song "Come On Eileen" by Texas Midnight Runners?
Yeah.
It speeds up at the end. The only reason it speeds up in the end is because they were running out of tape, and tape was very expensive back then.
Oh
so they had to go, right, we need to speed this up because we're not going to get it.
And it made the song what it is.
Right,
That's interesting. It's a good story. Yeah. There was another one I had heard about when the Guns N' Roses did "Sweet Child of Mine." It was, I think, like they had done everything but the intro first or something. And like, so Slash, when he plays that iconic intro, he had to like count and time it so that it like would end and hit right in when the band comes in, you know, because everything was on tape and just the way they had done it. Yeah.
And imagine that song without that intro.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't have been the hit it is, I'm sure. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, so cool, man. But that's some good stuff, man. I like that's why I'm having this show. I want people to know why artists make art. You know, I think people just assume that we just do stuff in a vacuum and we just do we just put out whatever we're feeling and that's it. But there's a lot to what makers do. So it's good to know that stuff.
It's a bit. I always say it's a bit of a summation of all of my influences, and that's. And I've said this before to people, but it's a bit like the 50s sci-fi film The Blob. You sort of it's bringing everything in, and you know it's growing and growing, and sort of turn it into something. Well, I always say that I call myself a blob, but it is that sort of. It's a fine line because. So you can't outright plagiarize stuff, but you go, I really like this, the way that this makes me feel. I like this, rather than going, I'm just going to completely rip that off. That's not cool. But the influence, I think, is cool.
Yeah.
To give a little nod.
Yeah.
It's cool. I think.
Yeah. Cool. So I wanted to ask you specifically about probably one of the subgenres you're dealing with synthwave. Would you consider synthwave part of your oeuvre?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because I knew nothing about it. So I've always made. I was very heavily influenced as a kid by Tangerine Dream.
Oh yeah, okay.
Michel Jarre. Lots of guys sort of playing these crazy sci-fi machines, synths making these amazing sounds I've never heard before. I obviously grew up watching a lot of Saturday morning kids TV and hearing the soundtracks to a lot of the cartoons and stuff. And that, for me, was like, that's the two worlds that sort of collided.
Yeah.
So I'd always use that sort of synth sound in everything I've ever done. Completely unaware that there's this whole thing called synthwave, which is a bit of a nostalgic nod back to sort of the 80s sort of music. I'm hesitant to say that I am synthwave totally because I don't think I sit naturally in there. I think it's something that I kind of I'm here, and there's certain parts. There's a bit of a Venn diagram that certain parts of it collide. I love a lot of synthwave. Don't get me wrong. I love a lot of synthwave artists. They're fantastic. I don't think I naturally fit into being in that one particular style. I like to sort of I want to make a track and I want it to sound like this, and then I might just go, I want it to sound completely different. I don't know. I don't know if that kind of comes across, but for me, it harkens back a bit to the albums I grew up listening to, which were very different. So there'd be sort of a theme running through it, but they'd be very different. You wouldn't write an album and go, I want this song to sound like the next one, like the next one, like the next one, because that's a little bit boring. But so I wanted to kind of take in all of those influences, and synthwave was one of them. So
I kind of came to discovering this new trend of the retro synthwave thing just because I'm a huge Tron and Blade Runner fan, and so I'm usually
Right.
representing that in some way on social media. So that stuff ends up coming back at me, and I think those two movies seem to have a lot to do with this, kind of a new explosion of this kind of 80s synth thing. I mean, are you fans of those films? And that
Blade Runner is my. People always say, "Oh, I can't pick a film. I can't pick my favorite film." Blade Runner is without doubt my favorite film.
Yeah.
And it's such a big influence and it's such a big influence on me as well. In just not just in terms of music, in just I think it changed the way I saw the world. I think.
Yeah.
Did you see the 2049?
Many times.
I really liked it. And I tell you, I saw it in the theatre, and I think was it 2017 it came out, something like that.
Yeah.
We had this freak storm here, and it blew all this dust, this Saharan dust, over from the desert.
We've had that recently. Yeah.
Oh, with the fires, yeah. So I came out of the, the film's kind of in that sort of, they go out in the desert and there's all the storm and stuff. I came out of the theatre, having been immersed in this little world, and it's like that outside. I'm like, is this happened? Have I missed something?
We're living Blade Runner now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and then obviously 2020 happened.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I read Red City about 3-4 years ago.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy you read.
Volume, I think I read the trade paperback, volume 1, I think.
Yeah.
Obviously, I had no idea about that. It was only, I was sort of, I think I looked at it on Instagram and went, I've read that.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
It's really good because that's, for me, Mars has always been that kind of mysterious thing. I grew up watching the Martian Chronicles, and it's because it's a bit noir-y, and I think that's kind of my sort of thing. It's not necessarily the kind of the Philip Marlowe noir of the 40s. It's more the taking it and transplanting it to something else.
Yeah.
That's what I love. And for me, Blade Runner, and I was going somewhere with this, Blade Runner is absolutely in that same thing. And I sort of, there's sort of nods, certain things I thought I read in Red City, which I was like, oh, that's
for sure. For sure.
You can sort of tell somebody likes Blade Runner. Not in a, I'm not obviously, I'm conscious of that could come across quite negatively, but it's actually, I think it's a really, really good, it's like a kindred sort of understanding of this is the thing I'm into.
Yeah, great. Wow. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So we actually connected a few years ago when you read my book.
I didn't know.
And yeah, cool, man. So we've got, this is kind of kismet now that we're meeting, and everything's kind of like clicking and connecting now with your music and my writing. So cheers, man. Thank you for picking that up. I really appreciate it. That was a lot of fun.
Those sort of things. So I'm also a big Alan Moore fan. So I've read sort of comics quite a lot of my life. Kind of started off on the Batman superheroes type stuff, and then I've kind of got into the other like Why the Last Man, DMZ, all that kind of stuff. My absolute favourite though, that's my favourite.
Oh, there you go. You're the one. Frank Miller, Mazzucchelli. Yeah, man. Cool. You're a comic fan too. That's awesome. Very neat.
I don't get as much chance as I used to, which is a real shame because my manager Lee, he's obviously used to work in a comic shop, and he always said, "You should read this, read that, read it." And I'm like, "When do you find time?" I'm trying to,
Cool. Yeah, cool, man. All right, awesome. I wrote another book called Moriarty. If you, I'll send that to you. Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah, I love that. Sherlock Holmes Moriarty, is it related or just?
Yeah. It was an image book. That was my first image book that I did actually, and Anthony D'Astudio was artist on that as well.
Image. That's congratulations for that. That's a big.
Thanks. Cool, man. Well, enough about me. Shocked. But thanks, man. Thank you for picking that up. I really appreciate it. I wanted to ask you about, just can you tell me the first time that you created music? So maybe with your parents' records, and maybe you're using your old samplers. What's like the first song, the first experience you had in creating a track?
Um, so this is probably going to be really embarrassing. I started off kind of properly making music in, I was 12, 13, something like that. I used to carry around a little book with me everywhere I went. And I was determined I was going to be the UK's answer to Chuck D from Public Enemy. Because I was a big hip hop fan as a kid.
Yeah.
And I used to write these really earnest political sort of stuff. Political
Wow.
My English teacher picked it up and I was like, you can't look at that. That's never to be shown to anyone. And they sort of read it and they were like, this is really, really interesting. Put it down and then said, it reminds me of Elvis Costello. And I was like, I'd never heard of Elvis Costello at that time. I thought he was talking about Elvis Presley. And I was like, because I didn't know, you're sort of into what you're into and you don't really know sort of too much other stuff.
Yeah.
So that kind of really inspired me. I'm going to do something for this. Turns out I was like the world's worst rapper anyway. So I started making like the music for it because back then YouTube wasn't around. There wasn't any I didn't know any musicians. I didn't know how to get any music made for me to spit my stupid little raps over. So I started making my own, and that was I had the cheapest keyboard I could find, and I had a 4-track tape recorder. And I was sort of feeding all this stuff in, and I'd get like little tapes that I'd find that absolute abstract nonsense. Like I found one on the front of a fishing magazine. It had this really amazing play at the start. This is going to sound so weird, and you might have to edit this out. I had this woman going in trying to buy some fish. So I made this track, took that, and I didn't have a sampler then. Took that and I sort of taped it onto a tape, and then rewound it and back on again and back on over top of this beat, and then play some like keyboards and stuff over the top. And it's just, I don't have it. I don't know where it is, but it's a little song that's just her repeating, "Thanks for coming with me to buy some fish."
That's very inventive. That's very cool. I mean, and there's a Dada-esque quality to that. And you know what I mean? It's very interesting.
This is when most people my age were sort of, out chasing girls or, getting drunk or whatever. I was sat in my room recording stupid little tapes.
You're much better off for it.
Yes.
You really are. You really are. I mean, the nerds won. I think we've established that well and good now. So don't worry about a thing. So that's cool, man. You're so inventive as a kid, man. That's really neat that you sampled from you recorded from a tapes, random sound bites and combined beats and things. I mean, that's a very, you're an interesting kid. Grew into an interesting adult. So
I would a sort of person. I was the kind of kid that was so inquisitive about everything. I'd take everything apart. Not a lot of people do that, but I'd look at it and I'd genuinely would lay awake at night and think about what happens when you flick a light switch, or what's going on with the fridge when the light comes on. It would keep me awake. It started off as I'd worry about everything, absolutely everything, and that worry turned into like inquisitiveness, and I was just wanting to know how things worked. So that's kind of, I guess, it stuck with me.
Cool. That's great, man. It's really paying off. It really has. I wanted to ask you one more before we get into the new album. I wanted to ask you about your previous album. Now, you did 2 albums this year.
Yes.
Right. Yes. That's quite an accomplishment. So good for you.
But one every 5 years.
Yeah. We got some time. But the album is it's called Ventura Boulevard, and it's a lot of references to LA, which is where I live. And we had talked about this a little before I started recording, but I live in North Hollywood, and I'm 5 minutes from Studio City and Ventura Boulevard. Right. So I connected with a lot on that album. You have a wonderful quote from the legendary sci-fi writer Ray Bradbury sampled in there, and he's an Angelino, lived in LA for the bulk of his life. And you have clips of TV news. And what's your relationship with Los Angeles, which really informed the creation of that album, Ventura Boulevard?
So even as a young kid, I've always been sort of fascinated by LA, because it's a bit of all the films I grew up watching sort of were made, say, other than Star Wars and stuff like that, which obviously was made here, but just it was such a creative cultural hub for a lot of the stuff that gets explored. And I don't know whether it's if living like in the US, you're sort of aware of the cultural impact of music, films, etc., books. So I kind of grew up on that, being this kind of promised land a little bit of the, and I think everybody probably has that sort of thing. It's this
manifest destiny, go west, young man. Yeah, I definitely did that.
So I've always had that sort of in the back of my mind, but it's a city that I always wanted to travel to. And my wife's lived in Los Angeles when we met. We actually met out there. So I'd go back and forward. So she has a business in Redondo still. So normally we kind of go back and forward. She was sort of, it's LA County, so it's like Manhattan Beach kind of area.
Yeah, nice down there. It's cooler.
My favorite area is Silver Lake. I love that whole area. And I keep sort of saying that this is pre not being able to travel because of 2020. I keep saying we should go to somewhere around Echo Park or Silver Lake or something like that. But we actually got married just off Ventura Boulevard, so that's actually what the reference is.
Oh, that's sweet. That's awful nice. Cool.
I don't think she knows that, by the way. I don't think she knows that's what it references.
Oh,
I know she knows we got married there.
Well, she'll find out your the secret of your title here and now. I'm glad I'm able to make that known for her. Where on Ventura did you get married?
It was a little bit further up. It's
like Sherman Oaks or?
Yeah, Sherman Oaks. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
That's hot. I thought like LA is hot. It's hot, but then kind of crossing over, going into that sort of magical bit where you go almost to the valley, you're like, oh, that's hot. I've heard like you go up further to like Palm Springs, and that's really hot.
Yeah. Mankind should not be living in Palm Springs. They have all those huge pipes that they're bringing in water from the Colorado River to make the place habitable. It's just, there's something about that. You know how Palm Springs happened actually was, it was Lucille Ball and Ricky, her husband. It was back in the 50s. They wanted a place where them and their celebrity friends could play golf and not be bothered or whatever. And they built a hotel. I've actually stayed down there in Lucy's Hotel, this old Art Deco building. And the place is covered in black and white photos of Lucy and Ricky and Ricky, that's not his real name.
Desi Arnaz.
Desi Arnaz. Oh my gosh, Lucy and Ricky. Thank you, Desi Arnaz and Lucy. But Lucy and Desi Arnaz and Bob Hope and Bing Crosby and all these guys and photos all over the wall. So that's how Palm Springs happened, was when movie stars wanted to get away. And I don't know how all that water got over there, how that all happened. But Chinatown, the movie Chinatown is kind of a fictionalized account of that. If you watch that, it's about how LA becomes a boomtown. It's all about bringing water in from Colorado. But cool. Yeah, I was like,
it's kind of, I guess, sorry to interrupt. It's kind of, I consider it my second home. Really, it's a sort. You go to many places and you can enjoy them, and you can. But I think I've never felt at home so much as I do in Los Angeles, and driving around it. I know it can be a bit baffling, like the layout. I think. Yeah,
it's scattershot all over the place. There's no. Yeah.
It takes a bit of going, right, if I'm heading this way, somehow I end up. And I have to say this as well. I'm going to boast a little bit about my wife. She's incredible in that I'd heard always about LA traffic. She has this gift that whenever we're on the road, there's no traffic. So I'm driving around with her going, where's this traffic on? Because everyone talks
Hang
about
out with you guys when you're here, man. I want to come hang out with you guys.
and then we'll have to, when we're out, we'll have to come and catch up. But there's, coming this way,
Yeah.
there's a whole stack of traffic. There's nothing.
Wow. I have no sense of direction, and my wife is she's a walking GPS. So when it comes to getting around town, like she just always knows where true north is or whatever. That's
Right.
so. Both of us we're like blind men with the blindfolds of their wives leading us down Ventura Boulevard.
I'm like,
Brooks is this way.
Just get me there safely. It's all okay.
Oh man. So let's talk about the new album, Impact. So what is the overall mood and purpose behind this album? This feels like you're definitely evoking a certain imagery. So what's behind the album? What's the story behind the album?
Like I sort of joked before that I do one album every 5 years just because I have this problem where of letting go of something. I sort of go, no,
Yeah.
I don't want to. The truth is, I just get really nervous. I would get really nervous about sharing stuff with people.
Yeah.
Normally my creative flow is quite stop start. That's why it takes so long. Because of this kind of lockdown happening and sort of being stuck here, I had lots of time on my hands, as everyone did. And at first, everyone's going, "Oh, I'm doing this really great thing. I'm doing this thing," and I'm like, "How can you do that?" I just feel so sort of. We don't know what's going on. There's all this awful stuff you're seeing around, and people are, getting sick, and people's jobs are on the line, and all this kind of stuff. I didn't feel particularly creative, and then almost immediately, it just went. I've got an idea, so I sort of started writing. I wrote the first track. I've got a second idea, wrote that. So the kind of EP, it came in the natural order that it kind of came to me, which is very rare because normally I sort of mix and match a lot of different stuff until I find something that works.
Mm-hmm.
This just it just sort of it flowed, and I think I spend a lot of time because everywhere here, I don't know what it's like out there, but here when it was lockdown, there was no one around at all. The streets were just deserted.
Mm.
So I'd walk a lot late at night with sort of demo ideas that I'd had listening in my earphones, just wandering around, getting that sense that this is the new normal. This is weird. It's not, there's a sense of isolation and alienation, and you see sort of you're close to people, but you're distant because you're apart.
Yeah.
You're behind doors or whatever, and it's really exploring that sense that we're connected in the sense that the modern world, we're all on our devices and we're having Zoom calls and FaceTime and all that kind of stuff, but we're also physically distanced.
Yeah.
And it's kind of really experiencing that from my point of view and trying to articulate how that made me feel. I think for me, it does this a bit because it's the different sort of emotions that you feel. Sometimes you're sort of bullish about it and I'm okay. This is fine. The next minute you're sort of a little lonely and you don't know what's going to happen. And it's that kind of constant, your emotions are being played with. That's why some of it sort of, I don't say triumphant, it's not the right word. Some of it's sort of more upbeat and in your face. Some of it is a bit abrasive and some of it is a bit melancholy, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, that's interesting because I did get the sense of emotion in the individual tracks, just in the pacing. When you just the structure. The songs definitely have structure to them that make you have a certain feeling. Like there'll be hypnotic beats. There'll be moments of rest with lots of sample and pleasant sounds. Then go right back in. So you definitely get the sense of rhythm and movement and structure to the songs, for sure.
Brilliant.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about the first cut is Video Crash 83. So you have this. You start off with this like synthesized bass line and beats and synth sounds. What does video crash mean? And it's apparently has something to do with 1983, perhaps. So.
It's a little funny nod to the worst video game in the world, which was E.T. Don't know if you ever played that one.
I never played that one, but I mean, I played a lot of Atari 2600 when I was a kid, for sure. And there's actually a documentary about the that if you may did you see that about how they buried them all? Yeah, so I did see that. I actually I got this wonderful coffee table book for Christmas a few years ago about the art of Atari, and so my wife gave it to me for Christmas, and I read all about the history and the creation of the art and all the creation of all the games. So yeah, so I'm a little up on the whole ET thing. So tell me, how does that tie in with the ET game? Tell the audience about the ET games. Who doesn't? People who don't know.
So there was, obviously, if you cast your mind back to '83, ET was the big franchise film.
Oh yeah, I remember how huge that was. I went and saw it.
Had a massive effect on most people's childhoods and adulthood as well. I think it was so big that obviously the Atari, and it's hard to sort of, maybe for the younger sort of viewers to understand that how big Atari were at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Games industry was huge, but it was still quite in its infancy.
Yeah.
So you had the Atari 2600, which was sort of, I mean, at the time, the games looked amazing, but looking back now, you go, and you know, I showed it to my daughter before, and she's like,
"Yeah, you thought this was great. What's wrong with you?"
Like a tennis game, which is just a thing bouncing back and forward, and you know, in pitfall, and it was very, very sort of basic looking.
Yeah.
But it was a big business. This, and I forget the guy's name. It will come to me, but he was basically given the license to write the game. And he went to, legend has it, he went to see Steven Spielberg and said, I want to do this sort of game. And he went, no, just do it like this one that he'd done for us. He's like, okay. By the way, you've got 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Something ridiculous, which, I mean, I'm not a games developer, but I know that you can't do a game in 6 weeks.
It's like Howard Scott Warshaw was the creator of the ET game.
That's the guy.
Yeah.
And so it's in, I think it's in the documentary, it talks about he just lived and breathed. He said he was even coding when he was sort of driving.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it turns out the game's awful.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really bad. Not, you know, and not surprising, you got 6 weeks to write it.
Yeah.
But they bought so many copies because it was on cartridge back then. They made so many copies. I think it's 1 million copies or something like that, or something expected, because it's, you know, E.T.'s like the big blockbuster film, and you know the Atari 2600 is massive, and the games industry is massive. It's you think it's going to be that sort of, well, that's obvious they're going to, you know, it's going to sell out.
Right.
They just got returns after returns because people couldn't play it. It was too hard. You had this bit where you sort of disappeared down into a bit of a trough that you couldn't get out of. Just wasn't good. Ended up basically bankrupting Atari. I'm laughing, I shouldn't laugh because that's a lot of people that were involved with that. But I sort of like the idea that something that was such a sort of almost, we call it here an open goal. You know, it's like should have been a win-win situation, just sort of ended up taking the largest games company out, and that caused the video crash of '83, which is what the title came from. It's nothing to do with the song or the EP. It's just I'm not very pretentious, but it's one of the few pretensions I have is I don't like I don't like songs that mention the song title in them generally. You know, I like to keep that sort of. It's like I like the artwork to be separate from the song as well. Mm-hmm. You know, you sort of get the things that's very literal.
Yeah.
In the, you know, it's called this and it mentions that title 1 million times in the song. I like it to be slightly esoteric and
okay,
you know, more abstract, I think.
Interesting. That's cool though. That's interesting. Because to know that the Atari is behind this track in a way it makes it's very cool. It makes it very interesting.
Have you seen that there's a hotel going up which is inspired by Atari, and it's kind of, you know, the Atari sort of logo. and it's
Yeah.
kind of neon. I don't know if it's Vegas or something. I'll have to look.
Oh, wow.
Drop you the link, but it's.
Yeah.
I saw it. I flashed up, and it might be one of those things that someone's done a mock up of it on. It's not really real.
Yeah, it's in Vegas apparently. Let's see
Oh,
here.
well, of course it would be.
Yeah, yeah. It's bringing a flagship. Gensler is bringing the flagship Atari Hotel to Las Vegas. It looks really cool. I'd recommend everybody go check that out. I'll drop a picture and a link to this article in the article that will be accompanying this video on the website here. So Atari Hotel, I want to check that out, man. That sounds
Be
neat.
good. Be good.
Yeah.
You think you get a 2600 in this room? That'd be cool.
Yeah. Wow. Cool. Yeah. It's like they'll build this big, nice pool, but nobody will be there because everybody's going to be in the room.
Right.
So cool. So now the song Skyline is that's a very tense one. You got this hypnotic beat, and then there's release of tension with lots of synth sounds, and the beat thunders back in. Like there's it's almost like a war, or like there's like a hurricane. You meet the eye, and then the hurricane comes back in this song. So tell me a little bit about that. And Skyline, and thinking of it as a hurricane. Like I said, I'm from Florida, so
Yeah.
I guess I think in terms of natural disasters that way. So
it is. I think it's a little bit like. So I guess again, I've always been fascinated by the skyline, whether it's a city view or a kind of you mentioned storms, but the storm chases when you get kind of the tornadoes and stuff coming up. In Florida, you've kind of lived that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
In fact, I always remember the first time I went to Florida and I'm flying in and there's like 3 storms happening like simultaneously, and I'm going. I think for me, it's about that. Because skylines sort of undulate depending on where you are, and I think that there's that sense of the horizon sort of being the where your eye sort of naturally tends to go towards, and there's a separation between the land and the sky, and we sort of depending. I'm not a flat earther, so I believe the world is round.
Yeah.
But you could see how in sort of ancient times people could see, well, that's like there's land, there's sky, that's kind of it. And I think this is going to sound really weird. If you ever look at kids' drawings of sky, they'll of a landscape, they'll do. I'm going to draw one then, but they'll do like the sort of the bit here, and they'll do the sky just the very top part there, because that's they sort of don't have that concept that it actually draws all the way down.
Right.
And that's really sort of what a long-winded way of trying to say it's that continuation, shifting of landscape, shifting of your perspective, the viewpoint as you go through. So the whole album as well is actually it's journeys. It's about a journey. So I always trying to envision it is in that we're moving through space, we're hurtling through space, we're hurtling through our lives. There's that sort of arrow of time. And this is really a continuation of that. And as you go on an actual physical journey, you get the skyline sort of evolving around you. And that's the sense of what I'm trying to do in this track, is trying to give that sense of tension, which I'm glad you picked up on, but that evolution. So it kind of progresses through, and then it kind of comes up with this big sort of finish, hopefully at the end, which,
for sure.
That's a very pretentious answer for someone who said they weren't pretentious.
No, I think that's wonderful, because it's like, in a sense, you're talking about creating the world as you move through it, because our perception kind of creates the world around us in a sense. And people will often capture that in a visual art, such as a painting, but to capture it in music the way you have is it's definitely a feat, and it sounds great. I knew there was something going on in this Skyline song. I had a sense of it just from listening to it. So
that's really, really cool.
I would say mission accomplished there, and it's very cool to hear your thoughts on that. I mean, because I'm a writer. I write stories, and I'll tend to think that way too. Yeah, I'll skew to the very abstract, and think freely, I'll sit and just think and imagery and stuff like that, and ideas come to you that way, and that's how you can form stories. And I form stories as words, and you form them as music. So
I guess, I mean, I don't know how, do you ever read the like the liner notes on albums and stuff?
sure.
I always love when they sort of give that kind of, not just the credits of this is you, but there's a little bit of story behind it.
Yeah.
And it always really disappointed me when I was a kid, when I'd read through like music magazines and people say, tell us about this song. And they go, oh, I mean, this is just about a girl, or this is just about this thing. And everything was oh, it's always about, oh, it's love, or it's, and not there's anything wrong with that particularly, but I was always like, tell a story. This is your moment. We don't have many of these moments.
Yeah.
Tell a story, tell your story, tell the story that you want to tell, and don't make it generic. Don't make it, banal and the same as everyone else's. Just don't be afraid to sort of lift the lid up on your head and go, this is my weirdness. Right.
And I think a lot of those folks that you read those interviews had that weirdness, but they were afraid to talk about it, But that's part of this, part of the goal of this show, Makers, is to find out what is it that's making us make stuff like this. And so I'm glad you shared that, and you didn't just tell me that it's about a girl. So, because that's the kind of stuff I'm looking for on the show, is to get into the nitty gritty of the abstract of the process. So the title cut on the album, Impact, you got two versions. You got the album version, the longer one, and you have a radio edit. So this is very interesting. It's different from the other tracks. Very dark, distorted bass line. It's very menacing. And the beat is almost like forgive me if you don't like this term, but it's almost like this evolved discotheque kind of a beat. It's definitely got this cyberpunk discotheque thing going. So I feel like we're in this sinister dance club. I actually think of, there's a film that I love. Like, I'm a huge fan of Michael Mann, the director Michael Mann, and I love Heat. And I just watched Collateral the other night. Have you seen that one?
Oh, yes, I love Collateral.
Yeah. So Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx, and they go into this club where Tom Cruise has to kill this crime boss over on the West Side. And when I heard your track, it made me think of that scene from that movie. You know what I mean? Where something malevolent is happening and there's some danger and whatnot. So, so tell me a little bit specifically about that cut and what Impact means in this context. I think we've gotten kind of a macro picture of what Impact means on the whole album, but let's look at this micro for a second, Impact, the particular track itself.
So it's kind of, it's a little bit, I'm glad you sort of picked up on that sort of industrial kind of feel. And I wanted to take it in a slightly darker tone, because I was always fascinated by stories that don't necessarily end a happy sort of resolution. You in the sort of the character arc, you get the kind of final sort of denouement, and everything works out okay. There's a big challenge. Don't worry, it's all okay. I wanted that sense of danger, that actually, what if this doesn't work out okay? It is that kind of, my wife will kill me for this, that post-apocalyptic kind of sense that actually, well, I know that we probably will get through this, but what if we don't? What if this is what it's going to be like for the next? Is that sense of impending danger that's always around the corner? And I think you can do one or two things. You can sort of run away from it, or you can actually acknowledge it and say, actually, I'm going to use that. So for me, it's a little bit of that kind of getting out of that my fear, my sort of worry about, are we going to go back to being normal? What is normal? Is this going to be how we're going to be for the next however long? And I think it is quite cathartic, I think, in that respect, in that normally I'd sit and worry, and maybe this is the process, maybe this is why it all came out and fell out the way it did, is that this is me just going, I'm not going to sit and internalize all this. I'm not going to sit and worry and keep myself awake at night. This is my sort of action. This is what I'm going to do about it, and this is going to be I love the fact that you mentioned that scene in Collateral, because it's a great film.
Mm-hmm.
I think particularly it's a really good film because Tom Cruise plays against his type,
Mm-hmm.
very much so in that.
Yeah.
In that he's not very nice.
Yeah.
Normally, he could be, he could be a certain thing, but there's always that kind of,
He's,
oh, actually, he's all right. Yeah,
he's actually kind of he's often kind of the everyman, because every man looks just like Tom Cruise. But anyway,
right.
but yeah, he's a sociopath, killer, high end assassin. So he's definitely against type.
And I think that's quite analogous to this, because there is that sense that actually something slightly is off kilter. I heard a quote, and it's from a sci-fi radio play that I heard years and years ago. I can't for the life of me remember the name, but this whole thing was basically, what if everything you thought about the core of the universe was actually slightly wrong, slightly off? So
Mm-hmm.
what you thought was, this is good and this is evil, or this is night and this is day. Actually, what if it's slightly skewed and it's not quite how we see it? And I like the fact that, so in that thing, Tom Cruise is normally the nice guy, the all-American kind of hero things, and actually he's kind of not in that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is us looking at things that we think are one way, and actually kind of taking a different view and saying, what if it is slightly different? What if let's look at this slightly off kilter.
Kind of in a devil's advocate role.
Right. And that's really why I wanted to kind of close it on that, was that it's that little bit of tension to kind of go, okay, you thought this would be a nice sort of happy resolution and ending. Actually, let's kind of play with that a little bit.
That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I'm a big U2 fan, and their albums most of the time end very dark.
Right.
Like you have like the Joshua Tree album, one of the big ones. Is it's very spiritual and celebratory and anthemic album, but they end with "Mothers of the Disappeared," about these Chilean children being kidnapped. And it's like. And I read a lot of interviews with them of talking about why they do that, and they're like, sometimes we just remind you that it's hard to go back home, that we can celebrate the triumphs and all this, but at the end of the day, this is what we're up against, So it feels like you're bringing that in.
Thank you. Can I tell my U2 story?
Oh, please do.
So years and years and years and years ago, I was working in a studio in Dublin. And there's a river that runs through it called the River Liffey. So I was in one studio where, funny enough, weird quirk of fate, Elvis Costello used to record. So he used to record.
There you go. It came back around. Nice.
And I sort of, it had a lot of sort of pretty big stars that come in and out of the studio. And there's a lot of music that probably people have heard was recorded there. And then one day, we took a break and we stood out on the thing, and there's two people in a rowing boat rowing across the River Liffey.
Yeah.
Look at those people. Why are they? Because you don't often see people in a rowing boat.
Right.
And I look at them close and go, "Is that Bono?" And they went, "Yeah." And they said, "And that's the Edge, right?" So yeah. Sorry, I do that cargo. And unbeknownst to me, they had a studio the other side of the river.
Yeah.
And they used to come and record certain parts that they, for some technical reason, they couldn't record everything in their studio. So they come in our studio to record in.
And they would row across the river.
They told me, and they just get this little rowing boat and they row across.
That is so funny. Some of the biggest musical, rock stars of all time. And they're rowing across the river so they can record some parts in this other studio. It's just, why wouldn't they? It's not like they have they can just summon a personal helicopter anytime. They can sometimes, but not every time.
Yeah. That's the rock star superpower, isn't it? Click your fingers. And
yes. Yeah. That's a wonderful story. Holy mackerel. I don't suppose you got to speak with the guys at all?
Yeah, but they're really nice. Really, really nice. It's sort of people that you have preconceptions that they're going to be very, don't look me in the eyes, don't this other, but actually couldn't have been nicer.
Neat.
Loads of advice, loads of kind of little, a big mark for me is they treated the little lady that came around and made tea for everyone and brought sandwiches. They treated us so like royalty, and that's a big sign for me, because I've met a lot of people who over the years have been really like patronising to those sort of people.
Yeah.
And you can sort of go, yeah. These people that sell, multi millions of records a year, they take the time to be nice. So why can't you?
It's a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, very cool. I was just thinking, I'm like, Edge lives just up in Malibu. I should get him on the show. Aspirations.
If I come across them in a rowboat, I'll mention.
Thank you. Hey guys.
Do you remember?
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, tell us about where we can find you on social media and where we can purchase your music.
Cool. Okay. So obviously the normal stores: Apple, Tidal, Deezer, Spotify, etc. I'm also on Bandcamp, which is it's the subtheory.bandcamp.com.
Okay.
I've also got my website, which is the subtheory.com. Very active on Instagram. Say very active. I try to be active.
Yeah.
Try to be very arty. My aesthetic is sort of black and white, or sort of grayscale. Very. I started off originally trying to be a bit Frank Miller-ish with Sin City kind of.
Oh yeah, I try that. I try that myself quite often.
So it's me trying to be a bit arty, and so there's a lot of. I tend to not mention music too much on Instagram.
Yeah, it is very nice. I just started following you yesterday. I
followed you back.
Good. Yeah, but yeah, you take a lot of nice photos, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I try. Again, I've learned off a lot of my wife. She's a very good photographer.
Oh yeah.
You should see it before I met her. It was appalling. I'd go. She's the one that taught me. So we'd go out often downtown LA, at like 4 or 5 in the morning, ready for the sunrise to come up. She would just stood in the middle of the big sort of streets. She'd just say, "Watch my back," and she'd just stand there for ages trying to get the right angle or something. I'm there going, I'm very British when it comes to that. I'm like, you shouldn't be in the road. Come on, come out the road. But so I learned to take my time a little bit and sort of frame things, and so I have to shout her out for that. So.
Cool. Yeah, I have to say I learned a lot from my wife as well. She's she's a good visual artist, and she's a good photographer too. And I learned a lot about photography from watching her frame things, and when she would post on her Instagram, I'm like, man, you framed that so nicely. So I learned a lot from her too. So it's
you take. I always find it fascinating when you find somebody that has that sort of particular thing that you sort of aspire to, and it blows your mind because you go, you just watch them, and sometimes you can be a little bit awe. And I think that's a great thing to be actually in awe of someone that you spend a lot of time with.
Yes.
So I'm all for it. So
yeah, excellent.
It's really cool.
Cool, man. So I'll have everybody, I'll implore everybody to please look for Subtheory on all the musical outlets now. And I want to ask everybody to please buy the record. I got Impact here on iTunes. I purchased it, so see if I can, so you can see it. There you go. I just wanted everybody to know that I put my money where my mouth is, and I bought the record. I want everybody to buy it. If you want to listen to it on Spotify after you buy it, that's fine. But he makes a lot more. You do a lot better on record sales than you do on streams.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Really do appreciate that.
So cool, man. Well, I'm going to close out today, and I want to give you a challenge. Since you are a maker, and we have well established that, I would like to challenge you in the next few days, if you have a chance to make a unique, special, creative moment. I'd love you to share it with me. It could be a photograph or a microburst of audio or video, just something simple, not time consuming, but it's something unique that you create on the fly. It could be silly, it could be sublime. It could be if you happen on a creative moment in the next few days, if you want to share, I'd love it if you could capture and email it over to me, and I'll share it with my readers here at DangerKatt Central and on my socials. So keep that in mind. If there's anything particularly special you would like to share with the audience here. So, and oh, and one thing I forgot, I can't believe I forgot this before we close out. Just let's talk a little bit about Kalindo and working with him. You did a remix on his Summertime song, and you guys did an EP, right?
That guy is unbelievably talented.
Yeah.
So we did the launch party. So take it back a sec. So first of all, when I got asked to do the remix, I was like, okay, I know that name. I wasn't sort of overly familiar. And I'm thinking, because most people jump to that old Janelle Monáe connection. I was like, no, Kalindo Parker, I know that. And I went, oh, that's Maceo Parker's nephew.
Yeah.
And for a long time, that was sort of going around in my head. And I don't know if you saw the James Brown film that's Getting Up, which like
saw it.
Craig Robinson plays like his uncle. And then I started thinking, actually, I saw him. I started working on his remix, and I was watching him on some of the other stuff they did with Janelle Monáe, etc. And I'm there thinking, it's a shame that this guy, or it's Kalindo who is Janelle Monáe's guitarist, or Kalindo who is Maceo Parker's, Melvin Parker's nephew, because this guy is ridiculously talented. We did the launch party for him, and he's making sounds with his guitar that I'm there, and it's embarrassing because I want a synth that makes that sound. I don't know how he's doing it. It's incredible. There's one. It was a very like guttural, imagine a lion's roar. It was that sort of kind of processed through a whatever pedals he's using. It blew my mind. He's incredibly talented, and he's just an absolute star. But he's a star. But he's actually one of the nicest people I think I've ever. Super
nice guy. Just my time talking to him, I was like, I'm gonna hang out with this guy. For sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Super cool guy. It really is. So.
Cool, man. Well, man, I want to thank you for joining us here today on Makers. And again, everybody, please go check out the Subtheory on all the socials, buy his music, and man, let's be in touch on the social media. And we're following each other on Instagram now. So if there's anything particular, anything you want to share with my audience in particular, let me know. Otherwise, we'll keep promoting you. And anytime you have anything new happening, let me know, and I'll do some promotion for you. And next time you guys make it out to LA after all of this, let me know, okay? So we can hang out.
Definitely.
Cool, man. All right, well, I'm going to sign off now. This is Daniel Corey. I'm here with Andy Hill, the Subtheory, and thank you for joining us on Makers, Andy. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Bye-bye, everyone.